What's up guys, I'm BTC. Some changes are coming to the PTR. Doomfist is getting a pretty significant nerf. McCree and Bastion getting buffs. Before I get to the balance changes, I want to let you guys know that there's going to be a massive patch coming really soon. They said that the next major patch will have pretty fundamental changes to the game client. The number of backend changes were substantial enough that they couldn't just patch over the current content efficiently. So as a result, the next time a patch comes out, everyone is going to have to fully reinstall the game. So it's going to be a very large download in order to get all of that stuff. So just be aware of that. Moving on to the balance changes, Overwatch Associate Game Designer Joshua No gave us a bunch of information on their proposed changes and some of the things they tried but they didn't like. Now, these are not on the PTR right now, but they should be fairly soon. We're going to start with Doomfist. He's getting some really significant nerfs. The first thing is one of those proposed changes that they ended up taking back and they didn't actually put it in, and that was they were going to remove that extra jump after a rocket punch, or at least significantly reduce it. Basically what happens is after you rocket punch, you can cancel it with a jump and you travel a whole bunch of extra distance, but they found that when they were playtesting it, it just didn't feel right, so they ended up making that back into the game. Now, as for the nerfs that the character is actually getting, the seismic slam range was reduced from 20 meters down to 15 meters, meaning the maximum damage went from 86 to 65. Now, when I say maximum damage, I'm talking like uppercut into seismic slam kind of max damage. Because if you make it up to high ground, you can still get a maximum 125 damage seismic slam. It's just now, whenever you're doing your seismic slam or uppercut seismic combo from the ground, it's going to do less damage and you're going to travel less distance. And then the second major nerf is enemies affected when you uppercut them now only lose their air control on the way up. Basically, for the first half a second or so, then they lose control of their character. But as they start to go back down, they can move their character in the air again, so it can help them to avoid the attacks coming from Doomfist. Because as it is right now, when Doomfist uppercuts someone, they're completely at the mercy of Doomfist until they actually hit the ground again. And it just doesn't really feel very good. But these two nerfs combined are going to be really, really significantly bad for Doomfist. Now, the uppercut one, I can understand. You can say, alright, give the other character more control of their character. I think that's a good change. It's definitely a nerf for Doomfist, but I think it's better to give the other player more control of their character. The seismic slam nerf doesn't really make any sense. He needs to be able to travel a lot of distance to get in and out of fights. The fact of the matter is, once Doomfist is in a fight, he doesn't actually have a whole lot of stuff to do, because you had to use your rocket punch to get in, which means that you only have uppercut and seismic to get out, or more appropriately, you should have used seismic to get in, uppercut to follow it up, and then rocket punch to get out. So basically Doomfist gets in, does like one or two things, and then he gets out. The fact of the matter is, Doomfist hasn't really been that good or useful for the entire life of the character up until just recently. And now he's starting to get used, they suddenly decide to nerf him. But I want to point out something that I've mentioned in the past. Doomfist still has a lot of bugs, and I don't think that buffing or nerfing a character that is inherently buggy is a good idea. Because what's going to happen is, when they eventually fix those bugs, then it's going to either significantly increase or decrease, depending on the bug type, the effectiveness of the character. Which means that they have to go back and balance him again. So fix the bugs first, then you can balance the character. You have to get the character working properly before you can actually try to make adjustments. Next up is McCree. He's getting a pretty nice buff to fan the hammer. The damage is being increased by 10 per hit, so it's going from 45 to 55. Now, for most characters in the game, this isn't going to change anything, because when he does fan the hammer, it's 270 damage. So pretty much everything that isn't a tank is just going to die right from that anyways. But now this is going to make his Fan the Hammer a lot better against barriers and against tanks in general, because he's going to be able to do a lot more of that damage. So this is definitely going to be really good. Now keep in mind, Fan the Hammer cannot critical, and it does have fall off damage, so you can't just Fan the Hammer from far away and expect to actually do lots. It's not going to happen. You have to be really up close for that to work. There was another possible buff for McCree that was mentioned. It's not going in right now. It probably won't go in anytime soon, but that's the idea that whenever McCree gets a critical, he gets some extra bonus. In this case, the example was the lower cooldown on the roll. Now, Joshua said that he liked it, but that it's a tough idea to sell. I'm assuming this means that the other developers aren't exactly on board with it, but this is something that I've been talking about for a very long time. If Blizzard wants to balance the game for lower and upper bracket players, and now specifically the Overwatch League, the pro level, then they're going to need more buttons to turn and more levers to pull in order to balance out these characters. Adding a passive ability to McCree, where basically you get it from landing a critical, is extremely skill-based buffs, meaning that the upper bracket and the pro players are going to land a lot of criticals, and the lower bracket players are not going to. So that means you can adjust the game for McCree, and you can make it so that that bonus from the landing the critical is greater or lower depending on where McCree needs to be in the upper bracket, and you don't have to worry about it making it too strong for the lower bracket because they're not going to land as many criticals. So you can buff the main character, the base stats, the damage and the health, for the average lower bracket player, and then you can take that passive with the critical bonus and you can change that in order to make the character better for the upper pro level players. Stuff like that, as I said, is a great way to balance the characters for both lower and upper bracket without breaking them. I really hope they do this for McCree, and I hope they do it for a lot more heroes as well. Next up is Bastion. He's getting a couple of buffs. The first is a very simple one. The clip size for recon mode is getting increased from 25 to 35. He just said that they didn't like him reloading as often as he was. This should help out the recon mode a little bit. The second change is a proposed one. It's still internally being tested. It may or may not even make it to the PTR, and that's the idea of giving Sentry mode a reverse spread. Normally when Bastion or Soldier or any character like that, when they attack, they start out with accurate shots for the first couple, and then they begin to spread out and get less and less accurate as you hold down the attack button. But what they're doing with Bastion is the longer you hold down, the more accurate it gets, so the spread actually narrows. So the idea is that Bastion can set up into Sentry mode, destroy the enemy barrier, and then as soon as the barrier gets destroyed, he can then start tracking some of the enemies, and he should be able to take them out a lot easier. Now, this is a nice change, definitely, don't get me wrong, both of these are buffs, but they're not going to change or solve the fundamental problems with Bastion. Bastion has one of those problematic character designs where he's too strong in the lower bracket and too weak in the upper bracket. So if they buff the character to make him more viable for Diamond and above, then it's going to make him way too powerful for Bronze, Silver, Gold. And the reverse is true as well. If they try to nerf him in order to make him easier for the lower bracket to deal with, then he's just going to be completely and utterly useless in the upper bracket. I think there needs to be a fundamental change to Bastion. It doesn't need to get rid of what makes Bastion Bastion. You can keep the Sentry mode, you can keep the tank, but there needs to be some other changes. I do actually have a reworked design that would completely solve all of his problems. I'm still working on that video, and I should have that out pretty soon, but there are definitely some problems with the character, and if you just try to increase the clip size on the recon mode, or even if they do put this reverse spread for the Sentry mode in, that's not going to help the character. He's still going to be bad at the upper bracket, and the problem is he's going to be even better at the lower bracket, so it's just going to exacerbate the existing problems with the hero. These changes are not going to make any impact on whether or not Bastion actually gets out of that less than 1% pick rate that he currently has. Like I said with McCree on that passive critical bonus, that could give Blizzard an extra tool to balance the character for lower and upper brackets. The problem with Bastion is everything is so tied together on the character that any changes they make, they can't make something that affects just the upper bracket or just the lower bracket. Every change affects it all the way across, so you can't really, like, you're just moving Bastion up and down on that slider, and it just makes the situation worse. So there are the changes, guys. Doomfist getting some big nerfs, McCree getting a nice little buff, possible, maybe a nice buff in the future at some point, and the Bastion changes are just not really going to do anything. So what do you guys think about these changes? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching, and if you'd like to see more, subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss anything. Also, come hang out in my Discord server and my Twitch live stream. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters. If you'd like to see what kind of cool VIP rewards you can get, check the links down below. And remember, always blame the controller, because it's never your fault.